Have you ever paid way too much for an online course? Or the other side of things, maybe you paid for a course and you're like, wow, that was worth 10 times what I paid for it. So let's talk about pricing today. This is kind of one of those make or break things to run your online course business. So I want to talk about it today and maybe give you some ideas you can use to have better pricing. So let's jump in.
Welcome to the Course Creators HQ podcast, helping you navigate the latest techniques for creating and marketing online courses. And now, here is your host, Julie Hood.
So in this episode, I want to give you the details on how to be a good pricer because it's so essential that your pricing for your course matches not only what you need it to be, but also what your students are willing to pay. And it's one of the questions I get most often from my students is, what should I price this? So hang on to the end. I'm going to give you 9 practical tips that you can use on setting your price. But first, I want to talk about some of the higher level kind of theoretical discussion around pricing before we get into the practical steps that you can take. So I was reading a post on Threads this weekend, and the gal had paid a well-known coach $5,000, and she had not gotten what she thought she was going to get from the instructor. And it makes me so sad when I hear these stories, because what ends up happening is it causes people to feel really jaded about coaching, also makes them super nervous about ever investing in themselves again. And what really upset me about this particular story is that the people who had referred the coach were not helpful to the student either. So, people had said that and kind of vouched for this coach, but they obviously didn't do their homework and didn't try to fix things for her. And so the whole thing just made me feel bad, not only for her, but for any other instructors who are not taking care of their students properly, not pricing things properly for what they're offering. So I wanted to talk about this today because I think there's some things that can be done both from the instructor side and the student side. And so let me start by saying, number one, and this is super important, and I don't know if this gal did this or not, but the students have to do the work in your course. So if somebody signs up, they don't go through the course, they don't do the homework, they don't show up for coaching calls, and then they don't get results, that has nothing to do with the teacher. That is on them. And so I want to make that point is related to, yes, pricing and completion and all of these things. The student has to do the work. And sometimes I think it's easier to blame the teacher than admit if they didn't actually do the work or they didn't show up. So sometimes that does happen. I'm not saying that's what happened with the gal on Threads. I don't know. I don't know her. I don't know the program. But sometimes I think that does happen. So for the sake of this discussion today, let's assume that your students are going to do 80% of your program, and you may have to do some work to get them there. And then when they do, they need to be able to get the results that you're promising. So that's kind of a basic thing that I want to set out there. The second thing that can happen is that a course or a program, it's not the right fit for the message they're giving or for the audience they're in front of. So let me give you an example to explain this. If I taught you a course all about LinkedIn and how to be an incredible teacher and instructor and to get in front of people on LinkedIn, it doesn't matter how good that course is. If your audience is not on LinkedIn, you're not going to have success. So I put a link in the show notes to episode 117 where I talked with Neil Thompson about how his audience was different and he had to market differently. So that might be an interesting episode if you think your audience might be a little bit more unusual. The third thing is that your methods may not work for a specific student. So let me give you an example so you understand this. I've been really paying attention to new ways to get leads and new ways to get in front of people. And one of the things that gets recommended a lot is to have a Facebook group and then to do these super hypey, clickbaity type posts. And maybe they work for some people, I don't know, but I refuse to play that game. So it is never going to work for me. That methodology, at whatever price point they put it at, it's never going to work. Like, I'm not going to do that. So the method also has to fit the student. And then the fourth thing is that as the instructor, you're making sure that that method works for a certain type of students. So, for example, when I'm working with my students to help them build their online foundation in the Launchpad program, you probably won't have overnight success. It doesn't work that way. Yes, you need to be in it for the long haul. Sometimes that's years. I'm going to be straight up honest with you. And yes, there are short-term milestones and successes and things that we accomplish along the way. But I'm not going to promise that you're a millionaire tomorrow. And I see sometimes these marketing messages that are so focused on these short-term success results that not everyone gets. And so then when students don't accomplish that, it's very defeating and very depressing. So be careful about what you're promising and make sure you're clear on that. And then the fifth thing is your students' past experience and expectations. So the amount of experience that they already have will impact how much of a mind-blowing experience your course is. If they've already learned it, they won't be as impressed as somebody who's brand new to the topics. Plus, as they are going through your marketing, they're building expectations. So we want to make sure that we're talking to both the experience level of the students and then setting the correct expectations. Because sometimes that kind of conflicts with the marketing side of things and talking about where you could take people. So it's a very delicate balance. So I was also having a very good discussion with one of my one-on-one clients about the concept of value versus price. So she helps people literally change their lives. And we were talking about what that's worth. You know, what is the value of transforming your life? How much can you charge for that? What kind of price can you put on that? And what is that actually worth to the student? And the challenge comes up in that there are a lot of steps between where they are today and where she was promising to take them, or maybe where you're promising to take your students. So yes, 100% a completely transformed life is almost like those MasterCard commercials, if you remember, where they would say things are priceless. Yes, transforming your life is priceless. And yes, you should be able to charge an incredible amount for that. But here are some of the things that are sort of in between where a potential student is today and then getting to that fully transformed life. So number one, for them, if you step into their shoes for a minute, it's just a dream or an imagination right now. They may not believe that they can actually get there. Number two, they may not believe that you can get them there. So if they don't believe that, your price could sound out of the park and unbelievable. They also may not believe that they can get themselves there. So, will they do the work? Have they done things in the past that didn't work? So that hurt their belief even more. Do they have the discipline to make it happen? What level of discipline do they need to make it happen? They may not believe in your specific methodology, your program yet. So that's something you have some control over. And then there may just be other things that they want or need to spend their money on more right now. And I'm starting to see this more this year in that people are being more conscientious and more careful about what they're willing to pay for and where they're willing to put their cash down for a course or a tool or whatever they're thinking about for their business. So the really good news about all this is that you can help your students through some of these different pieces, and some, if you start thinking about where they are, and you can help them get to where they need to be to sign up for your course. So here's my 9 practical pricing advice tips for you. Number 1, I want you to be 100% totally convinced and confident in your price that you're picking. If you are not sure, if you're kind of on the fence, if you're like, I don't know, that's going to come through in all your marketing. So whatever price point you pick, make sure you are totally, totally confident in it. Number 2, I want you to work on the messaging to reinforce how doable your program is. And if it's not super doable, then figure out ways to improve that and get some help with that. But you want to help your potential students see themselves making the journey with you and what that journey is going to look like. So how are you going to be at their side, and how are you going to walk them through it, and how are you going to take them from where they are today to where they're going to be? Make sure your messaging is talking about that. Number 3, use testimonials around all kinds of different things. So yes, testimonials on the program, but also testimonials about the way you work with people, about the results they have gotten, about the confidence they built, even, just one step of it that they really loved and they got a lot out of. That can go into, as you're doing a sales letter, that can go into the part where you're talking about that step. So feel free to use these things to build evidence, to build belief around what you're doing. Number 4, think about how can they test drive working with you. So sometimes it's just not a good fit between the student and the teacher. I remember being in school, and one of the best things about getting to junior high was that I didn't have to spend all day with a teacher. I could move around. So the teachers that I wasn't as excited about, I didn't have to spend all day with them. So we want to give your students a chance to test drive and see what it's like to be a student of yours, because that then helps build that confidence in your price. Number 5, this one sounds a little bit harsh, but hang in there with me. Especially if you're selling high ticket. 2 things I think that are super important. 1, for me, I've determined high ticket needs to include some kind of implementation side of things. Not just I'm going to talk to you and tell you things. I want some actual result of things happening that are going to get done by you, by your team. I've determined that's at the minimum when I do high ticket, that needs to be part of it. But then also, as you are considering offering high ticket services, are there ways to help people self-select which program is best for them based on their budgeting? So I talk about this a little bit more in episode 106, where I talked about how you want to sell your stuff. So maybe go back and listen to that one if you want to help people kind of self-select. Episode 106. It's in the show notes. And then number 6, include FAQs to help people decide if you're the right fit for them and if it will be the right audience. So for example, talking about whether it's a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced course would be super helpful. I know I've gotten trapped in that. I bought a course and I was like, oh, I didn't realize this was for beginners and I'm not getting a lot from this. Second thing is to talk about the audience. Like we were talking about the LinkedIn thing. If you know that you're teaching something that isn't going to work for certain kinds of audiences, make sure you say that. Make sure you tell your potential students who the program is not for and who it 100% fits and is perfect for. Number 7, stop focusing on or thinking about what you would pay. And I know this is a tough one, but part of the challenge is sometimes we undervalue our own skills and our own ability and what it's worth. So don't think about what you would pay. Really pay attention to what your students would be willing to pay. And then number 8, we talked about this a little bit already. Make sure you're setting those expectations and balance it with the sales messaging of helping them imagine where they could be, and balance it out very carefully. So this is why sometimes you see those long sales letters. It takes a little bit to explain all of this and to do a good job and to hit everybody's questions and to make it readable and valuable. So there are some reasons for those longer sales letters. And then the last one, and this is probably the most important when you're figuring out your pricing, you just got to test it and test it and test it, and then be willing to change it as things in the environment change. So prices that worked 5 years ago may not still be working, even though you tested them back then. They may have shifted and things may have changed. So just testing lots of different offers, testing out lots of different price points, and see what resonates and who you can reach. So yes, lots of deep thoughts today on pricing. I hope it was able to inspire you and give you a few ideas to use for pricing your next offer. And good luck. Sell lots of courses. We need you. We need your brilliance. We need your wisdom. Thanks for being here. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll catch you next week. Take care.